Hi all, and welcome to the Lesson 2 video for our class. Last week you had the joy of seeing my face the whole time. This week I'm going to spare you of that because I want you to be able to see what we're doing on Canvas this week. All of the readings come from Canvas this week, not from your textbook. And so I want to show you those readings, go through those readings with you, show you, why they're important, how they matter to our course. I'm sorry if the camera is a bit shaky. I'm still working on the best way to make these videos. As I've said before, I've tried numerous things over the 6 years I've done online teaching, and I like the idea of short YouTube type videos. This one will probably only be about 5 minutes, as will most of them. But again, I have not perfected this process yet, and I apologize in advance for that. So if you go to Files on Canvas, and then analysis handouts. What we're working on this week are the analysis handouts. The first one I have is outlining an academic essay. This ideally will be helpful to you all throughout the course and really should be something you could use all throughout college. It basically breaks down all of the different types of sentences you would want to have in a professional, scholarly, academic paper for college. We're not going to go through all of these now for the sake of time, and I feel the explanations on there are very self-explanatory. Basically, in an academic essay, though, what you want is to have an introduction where you briefly give some background and context, and before you wrap up that introduction, a clear thesis statement, so that the reader knows what the paper is about before the end of your introduction. You do not want to save your thesis to the conclusion, because academic writing as a genre is something where readers are not patient and they want to know why they're reading something, rather than, say, building up to the suspense. A thesis statement should be a debatable idea, something you have to defend and support. Not just a fact. A fact like Spokane is the third largest city in Washington State, that is not a thesis. That seems obvious, but I think sometimes we put facts state them as a thesis. So really think through, would someone disagree with this? Body paragraphs are where you support your thesis. So you want to have, an important thing here is clear topic sentences. Just like with the thesis and the intro, you want what the paragraph is about to be clear from the first sentence. So the first sentence of that paragraph should be, again, something debatable that you support through the course of the body paragraph. Not a fact, not this event took place in 1985. You want something debatable, and we'll see some examples of that in a few minutes. But what really helps a paper flow well is a clear thesis in the introduction and a clear topic sentences in the body paragraphs, and we're going to revisit this when you're writing some actual full-length papers later in the quarter. And then obviously a conclusion. So this is really helpful, and these handouts build on each other. So the first one is the outlining academic essay, and now we're going to focus in on the body paragraphs and turn to a couple handouts that deal with body paragraphs. The first one is this paragraph guidelines. And essentially many of your paragraphs in a paper can be structured the same way outside of the intro and conclusion. And this structure, if you get it down pat, will work really well. So this is actually the main focus of this week. I gave you the overall outline because it'll be helpful in the long run, and I want you to see where what we're working on this week fits in a longer paper, but primarily what we're working on this week are body paragraphs. So each body paragraph should have 4 types of sentences, and these sentences described here on this handout correspond to what I just showed you, but these are more in-depth explanations. So this format is introduce an idea, explain it a little bit, use an example to illustrate it, and then explain how that example illustrates it. And this is kind of the way a paper works too. You can think of the interpretive statement here as a thesis. In the course of the paper, you defend that thesis. So each body paragraph really has its own little mini thesis in the interpretive statement, which is also the topic sentence. That's another word for it. Topic sentence is really the word, but interpretive statement makes it clear that this is an argument. So in the actual body paragraph, you'd have the interpretive statement. You might need to provide a little background information for readers to understand it. So if you do, that's the definition clarification. A quotation, a textual reference. In our class, that would be a lot more things, but essentially an example. Something that illustrates or proves the idea in your topic sentence. So this could be statistics, a quote from a scholarly source, a description of an example, personal experience, an image from the internet, almost anything. Linking is the most important part, and because it's the part where you really drive your argument home, but it's also the part students leave off most often. I find when I grade papers, and I probably grade over 500 papers each quarter, that students very commonly will have a great topic sentence, explain it a little bit, have a great example, and then move on. I think this is the kind of our human nature, the assumption that an example can speak for itself, when it really can't. It certainly does to us in our head. You've been thinking about a paper, writing a paper, and your ideas seem obvious. But to a reader, someone who has not been in your head, it won't be obvious. And that's where the linking sentences come in. So one of the main things I want us to learn in this class is writing for readers, which you may not seem important. You may think, well, this is just between me and the professor. I'm just doing this for a grade. But in all actuality, you will face situations later on after college or later in college where you have to do writing and you have an audience and you need to be aware of that audience's expectations and to do a good job. And so linking sentences are key to that. Essentially, the link is between the interpretive statement or topic sentence and your quotation or example. How does the example prove the idea in the topic sentence? What is the connection between those two? So take several sentences and explain that for readers. I think what's difficult about this is that we're explaining our thought process. And we as humans don't like to explain our thought processes. We like to just be able to make our statements. But in a paper, you can't just make a blanket statement. You have to defend it. So it kind of goes against our human nature. We have to take the thought process we've had in our head as we've been planning this paper and put it onto paper. That's what happens in the linking sentences. That's why in some of the other handouts you'll see also call them thought process mapping. Mapping your thoughts you've had onto the paper so that the reader can now see them. So if you look here, we'll scroll down this document. If you skip that page, it has some examples, good examples of this. So after that is the body paragraph structure worksheet. So this again expands on the first two worksheets. And here, first worksheet was an outline of an overall paper. The second worksheet was an in-depth explanation of the specific things from that outline that go in a body paragraph. And now this is a blank worksheet where I want you to fill in these blanks. That's going to be your discussion board question for the week. So it says English 201. I apologize. I use this document in both classes. I usually update it for 101 and I forgot. I apologize in advance for that. But anyway, you've seen the different types of sentences for a body paragraph from that last worksheet. This one, I want you to fill in these blank spaces with those actual sentences. So essentially, what I'm asking you to do in the discussion board question this week is write a body paragraph. I have 6 sample arguments listed in the discussion board question. You can pick any one of those. You can also come up with your own if you have a great idea for a topic sentence. But if you don't, I have those 6 there for you to choose from. And this is meant to be kind of fun. This isn't something you need to take super seriously in terms of you don't need to write a paper about this. They're just some ideas, fun ideas to talk about, to explore, as you practice your critical thinking skills. That's really what this will ask you to do. So for the discussion board post, you read my post and pick one of those 6 ideas listed there, or come up with your own. Paste that idea or type your own into this first number 1 here. And then the rest of the worksheet, use your critical thinking to fill out the rest of the worksheet. And then save it and upload it to your discussion board. So when you're responding to other people, you need to download and look at their worksheets. But it's fairly easy. You probably wrote as much as this last week. I'm just now asking you to identify specific types of sentences by putting your text onto this worksheet. And there should be a button that says File Attachment. I have the right words in the post. Very straightforward as you're doing your post, and you just find it on your computer and upload it. This is not necessarily an easy task, so I want to give you an example. This is something I've used in 101 and 201 that has worked really well on campus. I'm trying it for the first time online, and it's an excerpt from a novel called Worth Dying For. And I actually use this excerpt and fill in a body paragraph worksheet with it. So you'll see it here. I'll try to zoom in for you. But essentially, this character in this novel has to react very quickly. It's an action-adventure mystery type novel, and he is in a situation where he could be killed. And so he sees something and he reacts very quickly. And the reason why I'm using something that seems so, not a part of English 101 for this example will be clear in a minute. If we read the first paragraph here, you'll see my point. The book says, "Nobody knows how long it takes for thoughts to form. People talk about electrical impulses racing through nerves at a substantial fraction of the speed of light, but that's mere transmission. That's mail delivery. The letter is written in the brain, sparked to life by some sudden damp chemical reaction, 2 compounds arcing across synapses and reacting like lead and acid in an automobile battery, but instead of sending 12 dumb volts to a turn signal, the brain floods the body with all kinds of subtle adjustments all at once, because thoughts don't necessarily happen one at a time. They come in starbursts and waterfalls and explosions, and they race away on parallel tracks, jostling, competing, fighting for supremacy." So this paragraph, this is a book I was just reading for fun late at night trying to fall asleep last year, and this paragraph leapt out at me because I was teaching my students in English 101 at the same time analysis, and I thought, the difficulty of analysis. Now, I should point out that this lesson we're working on this week is called Writing Analysis. In those linking points, that part of the body paragraph where you explain how the example illustrates your idea, that thought process mapping, that's analysis. So the whole goal, the reason we're doing body paragraph or any of that before thesis statement or something, is for you to learn analysis. One of the most difficult skills, I think, for students to learn in English 101 is how to write analysis. We so often as humans tend to summarize, but summary doesn't get you very far in academic writing, because most of what you summarize someone else can look up online. Where your opinions, your ideas, your interpretations come through as analysis, and that's what people want to read, because that's what they're not privy to on their own. So this little section here explains both from this novel, coincidentally explains both how to write analysis and why analysis is so hard. This paragraph I just read to you goes through our thought processes. They happen quickly. Chemical impulses, electrical impulses, chemistry in our bodies react. We see something, we interpret it. Our brain interprets it, and that happens in seconds or less. And sometimes we have random thoughts at a time, jostling, competing, fighting for supremacy. Now, what we do when we write a paper is we've done some research or whatever, we've thought through ideas, we have a plan, and those thoughts are jostling, competing, fighting for supremacy. And we organize them and put them onto paper. But that, like I said, goes against human nature. We don't always want to explain ourselves to people as humans. So You have to explain your thought processes. And this paragraph, I think, really encapsulates why that feels so unnatural. It happens so quickly. We see someone yawning on the bus on the way to school, and we think that person must be tired. But that's a logical conclusion drawn from evidence. You see someone yawning, your brain has learned over time that a yawn equals tiredness, so your reaction isn't that person is yawning, your reaction might be that person is tired. And that's how our brain works. And we do the same things when we're writing papers. The only difference is, we're not used to explaining it, putting it down. So what happens in this book is this guy sees someone and has to react. And before he reacts, the author takes this paragraph and does some commentary on how he reacts. His decision is based on some information that you see over the next 2 pages. If you open the other excerpt, if you open the other excerpt and read that, you'll see the main character, Jack Reacher. You'll see his thought process. And what I've done is I've filled out a body paragraph worksheet with his thought process. So that'll open here in a second. And so this isn't something I'd actually write in a paper, but it illustrates it. So Reacher makes a choice. He decides to react. He decides to preemptively attack the person he sees rather than waiting for that person to attack him. And then I have all the linking points. What I've done is taken every thought he has over the span of 2 pages in his book and put them here so that you can see the logic behind his decision. And these are for the most part direct quotes from the book. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, I'm not going through these worksheets in depth. I'd like you to read them on your own and see what I've done, and hopefully it makes sense. But this character deciding to react preemptively, and it's not technically self-defense since it's preemptive, but that decision, it illustrates how our brains see information and interpret it. And because it's a novel, the author puts everything down on paper for us to see this character's thought process. But as humans, we normally don't do that. In our writing, we need to. I'm going to give you one last example and then I'll leave you. This lesson's taken longer than I thought, but some of them eventually will be shorter. So I'm going to open the body paragraph structure worksheet back up and give you some examples. On your discussion board prompt, I have 6 different examples you could use as a topic sentence. I'm going to choose a different one, and I'm going to say, other states and the United States should legalize marijuana because Washington State has done so to great success. That's not something I personally believe. It's just a common argument we're very familiar with, and that's why I'm using it as an example. But it's a good topic sentence. It wouldn't be in an actual paper. It's too controversial of a topic to write on, but in terms of just a hypothetical example, it's a good topic sentence because it makes a clear argument and gives a reason why. Definition clarification. So here I might give some background on facts and dates of when Washington legalized marijuana in an example. I'd go into more detail here and explain what happened in Washington when they did it. And here I'd use the logic. Now we all know how taxing marijuana sales generates revenue for the state. But there's some logic behind that. And so we'd have to go through these linking points and explain our thought process. Well, people want to buy and use marijuana. They're going to do so whether the state brings in revenue or not. If we put on a tax, that revenue will go directly to the state. We might make a comparison and say it's been done with alcohol and tobacco, and it works similar to that. Even compared to other states like Colorado that have also done it. And then I always end with a concluding statement. Restate your idea. Tie these different things together. So we might tie these threads together. We might say, like Washington and Colorado, and like alcohol and tobacco, other states can use marijuana to create revenue in a similar way. So, tying those loose threads together so that the paragraph feels like a cohesive whole. So I'd like you to pick for the discussion board one of the 6 topics and do this. And when you get to this linking points, thought process, and mapping part, that's the most important part. and that will teach you how to do analysis. And next week I'm going to ask you to write some more analysis. So hopefully we learn that skill by the end of these first 3 weeks of class. These first 3 weeks are kind of like a little unit to introduce you to rhetorical situation and writing analysis. So that's it for this lecture. Have a great week, and I'll see you next week. Email me if you have any questions.